This is Thurgood Marshall. I just read a book, I can't remember the title, about Thurgood Marshall's young years, about the years when he's finished law school, he's practicing law in Baltimore, he's not associated with the NAACP. So it's that period before he goes to the NAACP, and it's a wonderful, wonderful book because the author writes about Baltimore and what Baltimore meant to Thurgood Marshall. And Baltimore made Thurgood Marshall, created him. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. This is Marion Wright Edelman, who was a schoolmate of mine. That's to say, she went to Spelman College across the street, Morehouse College, where I went to school, and she and I were arrested together at the Atlanta City Hall. And it's great to see her. I have a great affection for her. This is Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy. This is the march from Selma to Montgomery. Abernathy is reading the newspaper, and King is looking over the side saying, why is he reading the newspaper when we should be paying attention to something serious? This is Roy Wilkins, who is an underappreciated man in the civil rights movement, thought to be more conservative than he actually was, thought to be more of a go-slow person than he actually was. But he's a noble figure and should get better attention than he does. This is James Farmer, who's in the same position, should get more attention than he did. And he knows he has a button in his lapel. I can't quite make out what kind of button. Oh, it looks like an Urban League button. You know, that three things. This is A. Philip Randolph, the founder of the March on Washington, the great labor leader, wonderful, wonderful guy. Peculiar guy from Florida with an accent, sounds like he grew up in posh London, but a wonderful, wonderful man. And here's another single picture of Abernathy. Here's Whitney Young. Whitney Young was my neighbor. He and his family lived next door to my family when we lived in Atlanta in faculty housing. I had two daughters. I just saw one of his daughters in New York City. He was a great guy. It's E.D. Nixon. This is a younger E.D. Nixon than any picture I've ever seen. This is the man who got Mrs. Parks out of jail. That's what he's best known for. He's the great organizer, a labor union activist in Montgomery, a wonderful, wonderful guy. This is John Lewis, whom I know as the boy from Troy, chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, great, great friend of mine of many years standing. We have many, many great times together. He's about to be honored by a group in Washington. I have to make up some things to say about him for a video, which I've not done yet.
I think you mentioned something at the March on Washington, that Martin Luther King's speech was probably the most beautiful speech, but that John Lewis's was the strongest.
It was the strongest speech. It was the most militant speech. And John is the only person speaking that day who said black people instead of Negroes or colored people. And my job, I had two jobs at the March on Washington. One of my jobs was to pass out copies of John's speech. And I tried to point out to the newspapers, look what he's saying here. Because I thought that would make us more militant than we really were, or at least more militant than we appeared to be. They didn't pay any attention, didn't make any difference. My other job was giving Coca-Colas to the movie stars. And I remember giving a Coke to Sammy Davis Jr., and he said, "Thanks, kid." This is James Meredith, Marshall McShane, and John Katzenbach at Ole Miss, I think they're delivering Meredith to the registrar's front door, and they're about to be turned away. Yes, Dorothy Counts. I was crazy about Dorothy Counts. I never met her. She's a real cutie. And this, of course, is Rosa Parks. You don't have to say much about her. A great book about Rosa Parks, written by my TA from Harvard, Jean Theo Harris. The newest book about Rosa Parks. Everybody should buy this book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book about the radical Rosa Parks. It gives you a side of Rosa Parks you know nothing about. I met Dr. King when he taught me. You know, a lot of people say I was a student of Dr. King's. Dr. King only taught one time, only taught one class, 8 people in the class. I'm one of the 8. So if somebody else says they were a student of Dr. King and they're not one of those 8, they're telling a lie. They're big liars. He taught a class at Morehouse College. He co-taught a class at Morehouse College with the man who had taught him philosophy at Morehouse College, Dr. Samuel Williams, who was president of the NAACP in Atlanta. And I was one of his students. And one day he and I were walking across the campus, and I said to him, "Doc," his friends called him Doc. I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Julian, I'm not doing well." He said, "Unemployment is high, racism is everywhere, segregation is immovable." He said, I feel terrible. I have a nightmare. I said, Doc, why don't you turn that around? I have a dream. And well,
there you go.
You heard it from me.
That's right.
I made that up.
But you know the good thing about oral history, will you say it one more time? It'll be.
This is Medgar Evers, the NAACP field secretary, the first NAACP field secretary who was shot and killed in Mississippi. This is a great picture from Birmingham of the protesters dancing in the wake of the hoses.
This time period, did that get really melded together when you were watching that on TV?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. It was. I think it did for the whole country. You know, President Kennedy saw this. He said, this makes me sick. It just shows you the power of TV and how helpful, at least in this early stage of the movement, television was, how much television did to push the movement forward. This is Bayard Rustin, who is a great organizer of the March on Washington, a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's becoming more and more well-known than he is before. A book of his letters has just been printed and published, and it's great because he's a man of so many interests. Here. He's into this, he's into this, he's into this, he's into this. He's just a wonderful, wonderful guy. Charles Hamilton Houston, I believe. Yes, it is. The NAACP legal wizard, just a wonderful, wonderful guy. Died too soon, lost too early. Yes, Ella Baker, I was right. Ella Baker, who is just everything to the movement. SNCC's mentor, the mentor to all the people in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, just a wonderful, wonderful people. Helped Dr. King create the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, helped him establish it, helped him get it going, and was wonderful with SNCC, helped us know which way to go. This is Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. Huey Newton came to Atlanta once when he was head of the Panthers, and my brother and I were tasked with taking him around and showing him where to go. And I wanted so badly to impress him that I got a gun. It looked like a German Luger, but was just a .22. And my brother's driving the car, and I'm sitting over here, and Bobby Seale and his brother are sitting in the back, and the gun is on the seat between us. And I wanted, you know, Bobby to see the gun so he'd know how, and Huey to see the gun, they'd know what great fighters we were. Well, they didn't notice them, and so I began to pick the gun up and say, look over there, and look at this, look at this. He still didn't pay attention. This is Dr. Du Bois, who is the towering intellectual figure of the 20th century movement, just an incredible personality, wonderful, wonderful man. As I say, I've got a picture of myself with him, and it's just a treasure to have. And this is the wonderful SNCC Freedom Singers. Actually, it's the Freedom Singers, two of the Freedom Singers, Bernice Johnson and Cordell Reagan. They eventually marry, so she becomes Bernice Reagan. And then on the left-hand side, it's Bob Zellner, and the woman here is Dorothy Miller, who marries Bob Zellner and becomes Dorothy Zellner. And this is not Adolph Rollins, but Avon Rollins from Knoxville, Tennessee. And they're singing. And Cordell had this beautiful, beautiful voice. I always wanted Cordell to sing at my funeral, and the sad story is I had to sing at his. But he was just a wonderful, wonderful singer. This is Bob Moses, the leader of the Mississippi movement for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, just a wonderful, wonderful guy. You know, he used to talk, when he'd talk like this, and pretty soon you'd notice everybody in the SNCC was doing this. Every single person was doing this. And this is me. This is a terrible picture of me. But I think this is, I'm not really sure where it is. I'd like it to say, let me see. I had something I wanted to put on my headstone, and I can't think of it. Oh no, easily amused. That's what I want, easily amused. I want race man and easily amused. That's what I want on my headstone.